Hey everybody, Scoutcrafter here again. TGIF, you made it through another week. And you know what's funny about this channel? You signed up for tool restorations and I'm just taking you all over the place, aren't I? So let's go downstairs and see what we got tonight. Okay, before we get into today's topic, we're going to start off with a little tool subject because I know that's what you signed up here for. And one of our subscribers, Orlando Villafranca, had wondered about, he had a problem with his vice grips, and when he clamps down really hard with his vice grips, sometimes he has trouble releasing them. So I want to just really talk quickly about that, and let's get to it. Most of our vice grips are this type. Over in on the other side of the pond in the UK, they use something, a different type called a mole grip, and they release somewhat different. Their release is down here, and you push it to release it, which actually I prefer, but the vice grips here have a kind of an awkward way, and to release it, you have to stick your thumb in and press this together, okay? Now, this is a 7-inch pair, 10-inch pair. They're all identical. When you open them up, you see this little hump here. Now, we don't usually think of lubricating tools like this. You know, you have them and you keep them in your toolbox or whatever. Sometimes they get greasy, but every once in a while, you should put a drop of oil on your pivot pins, which is over here. Anywhere you see a pivot, just put a little bit of oil where it pivots. And of course, that would go, especially for down here, this pin right here is the one for the release. And to lubricate that inside the pin here, little drop of, I use 3-in-1, but any light lubricating oil will be fine for years, more or less, unless it's in an environment that'll dry out or something. But what a lot of people don't understand is at the end of this little arm, right there, that little dish here makes contact with here, and that's what releases it. Now, that has to be lubricated, or should be. It usually never is, but when you're putting excessive force on this vice grip, closing it, and I'll tighten it up here so you could see that's very light, but if you were really cranking down on it where, like that, you know, it's going to be hard to loosen this. I'm squeezing, it's not releasing. What you want to do is take a small dollop of grease and put it right on that dish, and I'll show you how we'll do that. Here we're using some high pressure grease, and this is a little cotton swab. Just take a little bit on there and just a little dollop right on there. See, that's it. Just like that, just a dot right on top of there. Now, what happens is when you close this up, that grease will ride on that hump here, and it'll be easier to release when you press it this way. And you will notice it especially after a while, but that little grease on there, but you shouldn't really be pressing down that hard. I mean, you'll know when you have the right pressure on there. It should be just about like that, so it releases easy. But I guarantee that'll help. A little dollop of grease if you're sticking on your vice grip. Okay, for today's subject, you are not going to believe this, what we're going to be talking about. But, you know, a lot of times in Scouts, what I would do to try and get the boys comfortable in front of presenting themselves in front of a crowd, I would come up with subjects that just, you know, random subjects that they can talk about. And one of the subjects I would say is you have to pick what you think was the best invention ever and talk about it for 2 minutes. And, you know, when you're thinking about your subject or what you're talking about, a lot of times you don't have time to get nervous or whatever in front of a crowd, so it would help the boys. And, but you would be surprised at some of what the boys thought the best invention ever was, you know. And if with me, I could talk about a lot of things, you know, the light bulb, you know, there's so many great inventions when you think about it. What would be the best invention ever, you know? But one of the best inventions ever, without a doubt, would have to be what we're going to talk about today, and that is the humble pencil. Now, one of the first things I started turning when I got a wood lathe was pens, and this whole area here is dedicated, or was dedicated, to pen turning. I was really into it. You know, anybody that started turning pens, we all just started making tons of pens and giving them away for gifts, and it was great. Well, right? As much fun as I was having making pens and turning stuff on the lathe, I wasn't a fan of the pen. I never was. You know, the pen was something that, you know, it wasn't super reliable. It would blotch, it would leak. It was just, I don't know. And we tried so many. You know, at work we used to use pens. But we were working outside, and when it got below freezing, or 20 degrees or 10 degrees, the pens would freeze up, and we were trying different ones, and I don't know. It was just so much of a hassle until one day, I just went back to the
Now,
pencil.
I didn't just go back to the pencil, but I really got into it. I started doing a lot of studying on pencils, and I was saying, why did we get away from the pencil? It's such a great invention. I mean, it's one of the best inventions ever. Why? What happened? Let me tell you
Now,
what
the
happened.
pencil's been around for hundreds of years, as you know, and for the last 100 years, almost unchanged, except for China. China started making look-alike pencils. And now a typical pencil, everybody knew the best way to make pencil was to mix a certain amount of graphite and clay to make the pencil lead. There isn't really no lead in the inside of a pencil, but they would make the pencil lead out of a certain combination of ingredients, and then they would put it inside of a cedar, California cedar wood, which would make a great pencil. Well, during the late 60s, 70s, especially the 80s, China started making pencils that looked identical to real pencils, but they were junk. They were that Chinese pulp junk wood that they used for a lot of things. It had, the grain was horrible. The lead would snap halfway up, so people just gave up on pencils. You know, the newer generation won't even touch a pencil. Yet, if you look at anybody, talk to somebody that's, you know, 50, 60, or 70 years old, and when they were a kid, pencils were
First I went around the house and I picked up all my old grandmother's and grandfather's pencils that were laying in some cup in the back of the cupboard, and then I started picking up pencils online. Nobody was buying pencils back then. I was buying up all these old pencils I could find, and I was noticing, yeah, this is a California cedar, and the lead was so nice. Even these old pencils that are 60, 70 years old, they still wrote as smooth as can be and beautiful. I said, wow. So I said, it's not me. It was the Chinese junk that they were pushing. So I said, that's it. I'm a pencil
Well, now
guy.
that the internet was full in swing, I can realize that I wasn't the only guy that was realizing about the shame of what happened to the pencil, and there were a lot of people that are really pencil connoisseurs, so to speak. So not only did I get into collecting a lot of pencils and using them all the time, I got all the guys at work to start using pencils, and also I got into collecting pencil sharpeners, of course, because that just goes with it. But it was really interesting, and let me show you some of the differences of the
Now,
pencil.
years ago, pencils, before they were mass produced, they were actually handmade, and they were such a treasured resource. Everybody would have a pencil case. Even when I was a kid going to school, we had pencil cases. Some of the antique ones were beautiful, and what they did here is an inlay tray or train, but this here had a slide that you would slide, and your pencils would go there. You see it held the pencils, but then if you gave it a little turn, the top of the box would turn, and you could have additional pencils, erasers, rulers, whatever in there, and you could put your eraser over here. This was a great little pencil box years ago. And then in the 60s and 70s, we had these type. It came with a ruler. It had a pencil sharpener, a little slide rule on there with your times table, and again, your pencils went in here. Beautiful. You know, they even have tins and things like that. So the pencil was top dog for many years. Unfortunately, the import pencils, the junk Chinese pencils and things that were coming in that look like identical to a regular pencil, they did a lot of damage to pencil manufacturers throughout the United States and England, good manufacturers. So what happened was people learned the hard way. Fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. So they learned that don't buy that junk pencil, and they went back, and there was a resurgence into buying quality pencils, and some of the companies that were in business before held on and then picked up business again, because now nobody's buying those garbage 99-cent for 25 pencils. But here's what we have here. We have a few different nice brand pencils, and you can see here, here's a Papermate uses a Murado, and you can see it's 100% premium cedar pencils. Again, cedar is the preferred wood for making a pencil, California cedar especially. But if you notice one thing, notice the points of these pencils when they come pre-sharpened in the factory. If you notice, the point is a little bit more of an angle. It's a sharper angle than a typical pencil sharpener that we see today, which gives you this really fine point, which tends to snap as soon as you use it. We'll get into that in a minute. But these pencils, and there are a lot of interesting ones, like, for example, Ticonderoga, which is a good pencil manufacturer. They make a pencil called My First Pencil. This is a great shop pencil. It's made for youngsters that are getting into it, but it's a thicker pencil with thicker lead. but it's a strong pencil and it's a good quality. They Ticonderoga also makes what they call a tri-write, and it's shaped like a triangle because obviously when you hold a pencil, it's a perfect way. It's very comfortable in the hands, especially for lots of writing. Pencil I thought was interesting. This is called a Smensel, and it's a gourmet scented pencil made from recycled newspapers. This one's orange. It's since lost its smell, but you can see here instead of wood, it's used paper to wrap around here, and I haven't used it much, but I thought it was an interesting pencil. But after the regular writing pencils, we also have artist pencils. And artist pencils, now artists know a lot more about pencils than the general public does. And then you could see this is, and drafters and mechanical engineers, you know, drafting, they use a different type of pencil than your average shop person or somebody that just wants to write a letter. And it has to do, a lot of it has to do with the coating on the pencil. Depending on the lead hardness, it comes in a category, and you can see all these are categories. H is how hard it gets. The higher H number, the harder the lead. The higher B number, the softer the lead. So HB is in between. That's what the standard American, what we use basically around the world, the number 2 HB, which is right here. And what that is it's a kind of a cross. It's hard enough that it will it'll leave a mark when you're writing, and it's soft enough that it will show up. Now, if you go to the real hard pencils, you really have to press hard, but they never smudge. If you go to the real soft pencils, you can do a lot of shading and things like that, but they smudge, and they're meant to smudge and things like that. So there's a whole list of here. But traditionally, our pencils that we write it with are normally considered HB, which is right in between the hard and the soft scale. Now, people that are really into pencils do have certain ones that they consider the best in the world. There are a couple out of Japan. There are a couple here made. The Blackwing 602 is supposed to be one of the best pencils ever made. In fact, the story goes they stopped making them. Palomino stopped making these pencils years ago, and the ones that they could find were selling online for like over $100 a pencil. That's how much people wanted this pencil. So they started making them again, and the price obviously came down, but they're still a little bit over $1 a pencil. But when you write with this, you'll notice a total difference. It is a number 2. It's considered a number 2, but it just is so smooth, and it has such a nice feel to it. And also the erasers, which is really cool, are you can see you can replace them. You can put the pink or black one in, and you just pull them out when they get used up, and you can press in a new one. So that's the problem with some of the antique pencils, you know, that the erasers usually dry
I know
out.
pencils aren't the most exciting subject, but I promise you it gets better, because now we're going to start talking about pencil sharpeners. And I have a pretty extensive collection of pencil sharpeners, some really cool ones, but I'm not going to go through them. I'm just going to show you a couple just to give you the idea of this perfect point.
Now, if you think this is a pencil sharpener or this is a pencil sharpener, boy, you're going to be surprised with what I'm about to show you, because these were for kids more or less in school, and they were cheap or whatever. Actually, they still make a type of pencil sharpener, and not a cheap one either. This is made especially for those Palomino Blackwing pencils, and this actually sharpens the wood first and then the lead. So you have, it's a 2-stage pencil sharpener, and high end. But what I'm going to show you is what we would think of for using it around the house. Now, if you look very closely at these 4 pencils, here's an example of how the taper or the angle of the point goes up for each pencil. You can see this one here is a very sharp, you know, direct point here, and as you can see, these taper more up. The more taper you have, the sharper the point is. Now, depending on what you're using, for the sharp, this is horrible, because the minute you touch this to wood or something, it's going to snap that sharp point. Whereas something like this is more robust and better for what we use it for. The problem is, pencil sharpeners don't give you really much of a choice. Now, here's an old electric Boston 296A, and I tend to like this because here you can see the point on this before, and I'll show you what, you know, and you can see it'll put on the point. It stops the pencil so you can't keep feeding it in with like some of the other ones, but it puts a nice point on there, and it does a really nice job of sharpening. These are hard to come by. It's hard to find a good one, but I like this particular. The best way to put a point on a pencil, especially in the shop, is using the belt sander, and that's because according to how you could put whatever angle point you want on here just by pressing the pencil and spinning it on here, and I'll show you how that works. Okay, now we put a point on here, a very acute point here that you couldn't do with a pencil sharpener, but that's going to be a super strong point and also very sharp. So it's good for certain product like a compass or something like that. This is the point you would want. This is your modern basic pencil sharpener, and they work very good. And how they work is you pull this section out here and it locks into an outer position. Then what you do is you take your pencil and you squeeze these two little dentents together and slip your pencil in just like that. Now this is spring loaded. So what's going to happen is as I start turning the pencil sharpener, it's going to draw the pencil into the sharpener like this, and it will keep drawing it in until you have no more resistance, like that. No more resistance. The pencil is now sharpened. You release the detents and look at that sharp point you get. Again, fantastic pencil sharpener, but not for us, because the minute you touch that point to anything, it's going to break. So it's made, basically this is made for engineers or people that are going to be really careful with their point or need a real sharp pencil sharpener. Here's the same type. Here's where your shavings go here, and this is a shape like a panda. Don't laugh. This is from Japan. This is one of the better pencil sharpeners I ever had. This was given to me by the president of the Antique Tool Society, and you can see here, made in Japan. And what's nice about this is the grip here has little rubber so it don't put any indents into your pencil, but it works the same way. You pull this out, it engages, you slip your pencil in like this, and then you turn it like this until it stops giving you resistance. Once it stops giving you resistance, the pencil's very sharp, and you pull it out and you can see you have that same type of sharp tip. Again, it's good for engineers or school kids or something you need a real sharp tip. Okay, what you're looking at here is probably one of the most over-engineered pencil sharpeners ever made. It was made in Germany, but I think it was distributed by a Faber and Cool and Company in New York, and it's the pencil pointer. It's a Jupiter N model. And this thing was a mess when I got it, but it's semi-restored to it. I had to make a tray here. The tray is always missing from these things, but I made one out of wood. And how this works, you can see here, it's pretty big and heavy for a pencil sharpener. You would think this is something else. What were they thinking? Especially when you see as complicated it is how it works. Let me show you. You can see here there are some oil holes. Everything's been lubricated. Oil holes here. There's a little oil cap here that's been moves over to the side, allowing you to put oil in there. That's been oiled. And what it does is basically all it is a gear here that runs a little mill cutter. This is a mill cutter here. And that will run against the side of the pencil. And let me show you how it works. What you would do is you would take the pencil here, place it into the cup. There's a little cup here. And then you would push it in, slide this down until it gets to the mill cutter. That's it. Now, these little pins up here on this upper bar are made that you can use your fingers. Usually you would do it like this with your thumb, or you could do it like this with your forefinger, but you press using hand pressure. You would feed the pencil into the mill cutter as it cuts the you can see how it works. I'll put my finger here, apply a little pressure against the little travel guide here, and that'll force the pencil into the mill cutter as I turn here, and that will spin. Again, it's spinning this gear, which is allowing the pencil to turn, and then it's feeding it into the gear, which is turning against it, and that would cut a tip onto the pencil. Depending on how hard you press, how quickly it would turn. It really, as a pencil sharpener, it wasn't the best model, but you can see it left a nice milled surface on here. And there's a close-up of the mill cutting teeth. You could see that would make the cuts on the pencil. Okay, if you hung in this far, then now comes your reward, because I'm going to show you the coolest pencil sharpener ever made. I have over 150 pencil sharpeners, and without a doubt, this is the best design, the most interesting, and let's check it out. Here it is. This is the U.S. automatic pencil sharpener, and you can see it has a patent date of October 1906 to 1907. And just look at this beautiful. This is unrestored. I have one I restored upstairs, but this is unrestored condition. And here's the pencil chips that go in here, and I'll show you how this works. Now, first of all, a couple things you have to pay attention to. When I put the pencil in, this will grip the pencil and this will turn. What turns this little gear here, what turns those gears is the blades. There's 3 blades that when they turn, the tip of the blade here will make contact and turn the pencil, and you'll see how that works in a minute. The pencil will come down this hole, and this will take a shaving off each one. one. Again, this is unrestored and still works after 100 years. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to mount this to a board so I can give you a close-up of how this works. But you could see the interesting part of how that turns. It'll turn the pencil a little bit each time as it takes a shaving. And it's just a joy to watch. You got to check this out. Okay, now please take note. This is a 100-year-old, over 100-year-old device, and look at how this works. Now I'm showing you, remember the tip up here turning the pencil and what it's for. Now I'm going to take a pencil that I intentionally broke the tip off here, and this is a cedar pencil, and I'm going to press it right in here until it comes, you see it sticking out there? Now here comes the cool part. Are you ready? Here we go. Look at this. It's going to shave a little bit off each one as it's drawing the pencil down. It's self-drawing it as it's shaving off a little bit each time. Now, obviously, I'm going slow so you can get an idea of how this works, but you can go much faster, as you can see, if you want to go normal. But this will keep shaving it down until you get the point that you want. And we're just going to take it down a little bit further. I'm watching the point down there. And again, remember, this was completely dull. And let's see, we'll get a little bit more. Okay, right about there should be good. Raise it up and look at that. That's like a perfect point for woodworking. But look at the jeweled surface too. Now, what's better is, and you can see each cut mark. And if we put it in here some more, you know, you could take the tip down. There's a little block there that'll stop the tip from going any further, so to speak, so that you won't keep shaving it down. So when it stops, like now, when it stops taking the wood off, that's about as sharp as this sharpener will get this pencil. And you can see here, look at the tip on there. Is that not a thing of beauty? Is this not the coolest pencil sharpener you've ever seen? Please tell me it is. Okay, one more time. We're going to try it with a round pencil. You don't usually see round pencils, but I'll try here. And I'll do it in, if we wanted to sharpen it real fast. And there we go. It should be sharp, so let's take a look at it. Wow, look at that. And the point is like polished. This is just amazing. And you know, when I bought these, I bought a couple of them. They were going for like 50 bucks each. Now they've gotten so expensive. Anyway, I hope you did enjoy that, especially that pencil sharpener. It was well worth it, wasn't it? And I have to tell you, give pencils a try again, you know. We're so caught up with the pens and stuff and throwing them away and they don't work or whatever. But, you know, a pencil is something that just, if the right pencil, you'll really enjoy it, using it again. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this. Take care. Have a nice weekend. Bye-bye now.